Hello, my name is Geocomputing and I'm coming at you guys today with a tutorial video on Excel. We're going to be looking at implementing collected data from real sources that I found and seeing what we can do with the data. And we're looking at the CO2 emissions by year. I've got Canada, Brazil, and United Kingdom here, and here's a graph of the display of emissions from these three countries. We're going to be making something similar to this. Here's the raw data. This is straight from the source, which I have pulled up right here, ourworldanddata.org. There's all these different parameters you can check off, and then super easily you just download the data. But we're only worried about three countries. In this case, we're doing Germany, the United States, and China. I'm going to show you guys just very quickly and simply how to make a table of the data for China. So we're going to go back to the raw data. Click on the box that's 1907. You scroll down all the way to the latest, which is 2024. You hold shift down, then you click again, and now you have the entire box highlighted. You can copy it just by doing Control-C, and then you can hop over. Down here, by the way, is my different sheets. This is going to be navigated throughout the video, and it's a good idea to do this to keep all your work organized. And we just copied all the years, so now we're just going to put them in this box and paste them like that. There you go. You have all the years in there, just like the other two, and then we're going to find the annual CO2 emissions in the raw data. And then there you go. That is all the data for the annual CO2 emissions from 1907 all the way up to 2024. It's time to graph it now. Again, highlight the data that we already have. We just go to Insert. We're going to do a scatter plot. There's a bunch of different graphs up here you can do, and all sorts of different things you can plot and show the relationships between, but for the sake of this video, we're just going to be doing a scatter plot, which is one of the best things you can do on Excel. So the first thing we're going to do is give it a good title, CO2 emissions. Good to have your scatter plot just be nice and large. We're going to come over to the plus sign right here and check axis titles. We don't need data labels. We don't want error bars. We do want grid lines. We do want a legend. Get the minimum and the maximum of the axis right, so we're just in axis options. The minimum is going to be 1907 when the data starts. And for the maximum, we'll do 2024. We're going to work on customizing the actual chart now. We can do gradient fill, which I really like. A bunch of different options. Just gonna go with silver. I like to put a glow on. Yeah, there we go. That looks really cool. One of the last things I do want to do is show you guys how to customize the actual line we got. So you can mess with the shadow. I like to mess with things like the glow. Doesn't need to be too intense because we're going to add some other lines to this. So we're actually going to change it to the color we've been using for China to make that a lot more clear, and it automatically changes the legend as well. Last step now is to actually, work on the data you got in the chart. You're going to right click and press select data, and then we're going to add the other ones. So this is very simple. You press add, and then we'll do United States first. The series X values are the years. The Y values, same thing. Okay. And now there you go. There's the United States carbon dioxide emissions graphed over time, and we get a nice, interesting comparison. There's the line for Germany. It's a pretty stark contrast there. You have a graph that is displaying the CO2 emissions for all three countries, and you can compare them very easily. It's pretty clear to look at, and then you can take this graph and you can export it anywhere. You can put it onto Google Slides, whatever you need, pretty much. I want to do something a little more complicated. I also grabbed some raw data, the population numbers. I want to compare the total population with the CO2 emissions and see if there's any correlation there. I already got started on Germany and the United States, and basically what we're trying to do here is calculate like the correlation value, and we've got the table for China here, and we need the China CO2 emissions. We also need the China total population, which I grabbed right here from the raw data here. And now to calculate the correlation, you're gonna go equals, and then in all caps type coral. You can see it pop up over here, and then you're gonna select this and bring it all the way down, then press comma. You can see the equation over here, and then that, bring that all the way down, and then it'll give us the correlation, pretty high positive correlation. Then there's this little green box right there, and you can drag that down, and it just brings in all the correlations for every year. That's really cool. And then over here, I have a graph plotting the correlation between the CO2 emissions and total population over time for the countries. Now with this data we just got, I'm gonna grab it. Now I can select data, add China, then series X values is just the year, and series Y values is here. And we go okay, and now okay. And if we go to the graph, there it is. You can see it's a very high positive correlation for China up until very recently. And so I just colored the line. There's points on this graph that weren't on the other graph, so we need to also color those as well, but that looks like that. I've been using this gray outline for the points, which I think looks cool. We have a graph showing the correlations between CO2 emissions and total population in Germany, United States, and China. If the points are either like very up high or very down low, it means that either there's a very strong positive correlation or strong negative correlation, and when the points are in the middle like this, it means there wasn't much of a correlation at all. And it's interesting because the points for each of the countries hit that middle area all at very different times. Apart from these little, sections for each of them, there's a clear correlation between, in this case, growing CO2 emissions as the populations of these countries grow, and they need to burn more fossil fuels to support all the people that are living in these places. I will put the link to the data I used down in the bio, and you can go right to it. You can find your own stuff here. There's so much cool stuff to find. I hope you guys thought this was interesting and helpful, and I'll see you next time. Bye.